Since we have it, I'll use it. I'm going to introduce my distinguished panel up here tonight, and they're each going to give you a 5-minute position statement, and then we're going to open it up to you folks for questions and answers. So with that, we'll start with Judge Terry Stopeka.
Thank you. I usually don't need a microphone, so if anyone can't hear me, which I've never had anyone say they can't, please let me know. Always one in the crowd. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for having us. I usually speak about an hour and a half on this topic, so for me to condense it to 5 minutes is whew. But the point of my position here, or my being here, is to give you a little bit what's proposed, to clear up some answers or some, I think, what are problematic areas and what's been disseminated about issues 2, and mostly actually issue 3, and to also, based upon the 182 annual report from the Rocky Mountain high-intensity traffic area, or drug trafficking area, which, and I apologize too, because the inimitable Mr. Swenson and I are use the same source unknowingly until we walked in today, so if there's some overlap, it's actually worth repeating. In Ohio right now, it's supposed to, if issue 3 passes, it will create a $1 billion marijuana monopoly, and yes, our Ohio Supreme Court deemed that it is a monopoly that's proposed for 10 wealthy investor groups. That's a few making millions while jeopardizing the lives of all Ohioans, in my view. And as many of you know, I go around and I speak about our problematic opiate heroin addiction. The last thing I want to see in our courts, and I'm sure in our community, as Judge Brendel in his court really doesn't probably want to see, is another gateway drug or another substance that is legal. And now, for those of you driving around or through the communities, you think there's a Starbucks on every corner. The proposal is to have 1,159 marijuana stores. That's the retail stores that, if this passes, would be in the state of Ohio. That's more than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. And 3 times the number of liquor stores in the state of Ohio. From our research and from all the stuff I do with Dr. Michelson and other counselors, marijuana can be addictive, both physically and psychologically. I'll let Dr. Michelson get more into that from his perspective. It can reduce IQ points up to 8 points, reduce it 8 points. I don't know about you individuals here, 1 point in my world is a lot for reduction. Based upon the information from Colorado, traffic fatalities in Colorado involving drivers testing positive has increased 92%. That's fatalities. Driving under the influence of marijuana, accidents has increased 100%, while all other accidents, just, maybe, sliding off due to black ice or alcohol-related, are all down. It's not going to eliminate the black market. Crime is up 10% in Colorado, including crimes against the home for stealing, and marijuana in the black market is cheaper than what they sell in the retail stores. And since it's only available to be sold to 21 and older, young kids have to get it, which is another problem. There's a 40% increase in school suspensions or expulsions due to marijuana-related incidents in junior highs and high schools in Colorado. 38% increase in hospitalizations due to the edibles, ingestion of edibles, and poisonings. When you ingest marijuana, it's a slower process than inhaling, so people are eating the brownies and the gummy bears. Oh, and by the way, things that are enticing to little children, and they're getting sick from the high level of THC. In the 70s, the THC was about 3%. The marijuana nowadays is about 36 to 38%. Like I said, marijuana use, in my world, I see it increasing as a gateway drug to more serious drug use, like cocaine and heroin. Some things that I want to clear up. Marijuana, minor marijuana possession, if you have that on your record and you're what's called an eligible offender, it can be expunged or sealed from your record as the law is in existence in Ohio now. You don't need to start fresh to have a minor possession charge expunged. No one goes to jail for minor possession. It's a $150 fine, and that's 100 milligrams or less. Do you really need more in your possession? Some other things that are happening in Colorado. All these go green, and I don't, no pun intended, but the people who want to save the earth, because of the growing farms and growing the glass, where they grow the marijuana, greenhouses. The average monthly utility bill is between $20,000 and $50,000. Electricity use in Colorado is up 40% since legalization. And I'm going to finish on this note. Medical marijuana, first, that term is a misnomer. Any physician will tell you there's no such thing as medical marijuana. There is this pill form called Marinol. Dronabinol is the pharmaceutical term. You can get it. You just can't get high off of it. Do you think that 4-year-old epileptic that you see on the news is smoking a joint? No. It's in a form that you can either take pill form or put in an oil form. So you can get it now because it's not a Schedule I drug. But I just wanted to disseminate some truth and some facts about what's out there with Issue 3. So just be careful. I think the whole purpose of us here today, this very knowledgeable panel, is to just give you the facts and what could happen should this Issue 3 pass. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We're going to stay with Beauty Before Age. We go next with Miss Sarah Fowler. And Sarah is with the Ohio State Board of Education. Pardon? Oh, you'd like a microphone. Oh. There it is. You don't have that preacher's voice, all right? Go on here.
Not yet. Well, thank you, Pastor Sanders, for inviting me to come. I'm kind of the Johnny-come-lately. We were talking on Saturday, and he's like, you should join our panel. And I'm like, okay, all I really want to do is share with you a few things that happened at our September State Board of Education meeting. As you know, I'm here to represent my own viewpoints, not those of the State Board of Education. But in this case, I can tell you that the State Board of Education passed a resolution opposing Issue 3 with 16 voting in favor and 2 voting against. And part of the reason for that was going back to Judge Topeka's comment about the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, the impact by the Rocky Mountain high-intensity drug trafficking area. And I think one of the reasons that that study is being used so much is because it's comparing data from before and after and post-commercialization, because Colorado kind of did it in increments. They started out allowing a small amount, and then they increased the amount, and basically this study has been tracking what was it like beforehand, then what was it like with a little bit, and what was it like with a lot more. And some of the things that stuck out to us as board members were particularly around how does this impact children in school. And as was already mentioned, there is a 40% increase of drug-related suspensions among 12 to 17-year-olds being seen in Colorado since the increased post-commercial, or since they commercialized the use of it in 2013. We're also seeing a 24% increase of use in 12 to 17-year-olds, and the school arrests have increased by over 39% in Denver. There's a few other things I'd like to share with you from this report. After just 1 year of legalization in Colorado, there was an 8% increase in the use of marijuana among 12 to 17-year-olds in the state. They are seeing a 20% increase in the 12 to 17-year-old probationers being tested positive for marijuana. And they are having kids coming to school that are saying their parents are allowing and encouraging them to use it at home. They are seeing a drop in grades. They're seeing a drop in students' ability to do well in assessments in areas that they would otherwise have performed well in the past. We are seeing a large number of question marks coming up to, okay, if we're having a 40% increase of students, what is that going to do to our graduation rates? What is that going to do to students' ability to go get a job in the future and to have a reliable source of income? And that was really the basis for the State Board of Education deciding that for the first time that anyone could remember in the history of the State Board of Education of 65 plus years, we decided that this is such an important issue that the State Board needed to take a position on a state ballot issue. So, again, the board resolution is to oppose issue 3 from the standpoint of concerns over what will the impact be on school children. I know that's probably less than 5 minutes, but that really is the main thing that I wanted to share with you. So, thank you.
You did it very well. I'm going to ask the other panelists to stand, starting with Dr. Michelson. Introduce yourself, and then take it away. Now, he's a preacher, so he shouldn't need this length. We'll give it to him in here.
It's not my ability to speak, it's your ability to hear I'm concerned about. So I want to be sure at least what I say is heard. You're older than I am. So
I'm older than everybody.
I'm the executive director for the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Geauga County. I'm also the treatment coordinator for the Lake County Drug Court. And I was recently released from jail after spending 7 years as the coordinator for the jail treatment program. I just didn't want you to think I was in there on charges, at least this time around. There are 2 or 3 things that I just want to mention. I'm really concerned about consistency. A lot of times we have knee-jerk reactions to things and we throw statistics around, and we all know how you can bend statistics. I don't think we ought to legalize marijuana. I don't think we ought to legalize cigarettes either, because they kill more people than marijuana, but we're not consistent with that. If we start talking about cheeseburgers and one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I think this group ought to be concerned about, what Uncle Sam gives, it can take away, and that type of thing. So when we start saying we're against this and we're against this, we need to think consistently about all of the other things too, and not just one thing that happens to be the flavor of the month. So I'm not for legalization, but let me just tell you some concerns I have. Anytime you try to tackle a problem like we have in our culture, or a public health problem, or whatever you want to call it, there are 3 things you have to address. One is the agent, the other is the host, the other is the environment. The agent is the substance, marijuana, heroin, Twinkies, whatever the issue is. That's the easy one. You can get rid of the agent. And of course, we've tried that in our country before with alcohol. Okay, so the agent is one aspect, but the host is the person. And let me just say, my concern is, if you don't change people, you can delete or add substances till the cows come home. And the problem has not really been addressed. Okay? So you deal with the agent, that's the easy part. The host is even harder, but then the environment. That's the culture. That's the country. That's the family. And people always ask me, and these judges and sheriffs and others are always asking, what do you think the root of the problem is? I think it's a breakdown in the home. You get the home straightened out, and we wouldn't even have this discussion tonight. And that's a harder issue to deal with. Now, let me say this. If this passes, I hope it doesn't, but if it passes, you'll have 85% of your population that will be prone to maybe use or abuse that substance, okay? Use or abuse that substance. But you'll have about 15% that will be addicted. Now, please hear this. If it passes, they'll be addicted. If it doesn't pass, they'll be addicted. Because you've got about 15% of your population that are going to struggle with addiction. Alcohol and drugs are not the problem. It's the way people learn to deal with their problems, and we call that problem addiction. And we talk about gateway. The gateway to addiction is not so much a particular substance. It's really family history. It's nature, nurture. Addiction affects people physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And we've pretty much just forgotten about the whole spiritual aspect. And if you don't get it from the inside out, then you're basically just imposing external control, which never works very well at all. I don't understand why we can't wait 3 to 5 years and let everybody else go through all the trouble of trial and error. Why don't, it would just seem reasonable, unless there's some ulterior motive like money or something like that we would just stand back. We would just stand back and look and say, well, let's see what they do. Let's see how this comes out. Let's see how this talk comes together, and let them go through all of that. But that's just my opinion.
You all know who this little fella is, right?
Good evening. I'll go with the preacher's mouth.
You going up? Yeah.
By the way, Dennis, Mike, I'm Tim Grindell. I'm the Geauga County Probate and Juvenile Judge. I'm really standing here as Juvenile Judge today. Dennis was being modest. Dennis is one of the finest drug rehabilitation people we've ever had. The program he ran at the jail was worth its weight in gold. And while his predecessor is doing a fine job, Dennis, we still miss you. Dennis did more to help people with drug addiction in this county than all the rest of us in this room. And I truly mean that. But let me talk a little bit about Ohio. I understand, and I'm going to throw some figures at you from Colorado in a minute, but I get to tell you what it's like right here in Ohio for juveniles in our county of Geauga. When I took this job, I didn't think we had these people, but in 4 years, I've certainly gotten educated. Let's talk, first of all, about the gateway drug. Any study that tells you marijuana doesn't open the door to other drug use, like cocaine or heroin, in my opinion, has never spent a day in my court. And if any of you believe that studies, I will invite you to spend the day in my court. I'm sure Judge Topeka would do the same. And you can watch the gateway happen in front of you. We are up to our armpits in the heroin problem in this county. People can deny it. People can look the other way. I've taken 8 children away in the last week, 5 children with the help of Mr. Swenson over this last weekend because mom and dad allegedly couldn't get away from the heroin problem. But very few people wake up in the morning and say, let's shoot up with heroin. You read their life stories. You read their drug evaluations. And it reads something like this. Between the ages of 11 and 14, I found the liquor in the liquor cabinet. And then I started smoking some joints with my buds. And what it does is it inoculates them from the fear of the other drugs. I am convinced we are in this boat because of the pharmaceutical commercials that you all watch 6 times per half hour, 10 times per hour that says if your finger hurts, take a drug. If you can't sleep, take a drug. If you can't sleep, take a drug. You want to have sex, take a drug. You don't want to have sex, take a drug. You got a headache, take a drug. You want to give somebody a headache, take a drug. And by the time you are 10 years old, you have watched over 10,000 ads telling you that everything that is wrong in your life can be corrected by doing just one thing. Take a drug. And then we tell the 14-year-old, don't take marijuana. Don't take heroin when you're 18 years old. Don't use methamphetamine. And they look at us and say, what are you, nuts? We've watched those commercials. It's take a drug. It's like telling a 4-year-old, pick out your grandma or pick out Ronald McDonald. 80% of the time they get it right on Ronald McDonald because they've watched those commercials. We lived in a different age. If you're an old man like me, They didn't even advertise drugs on TV until Bear Aspirin. And I remember the big scandal when Bear Aspirin was advertising. Oh my God, the world's going to go to the heck of the handbasket because we're advertising Bear Aspirin. Now we're advertising everything under the sun to take the drug. And then we want to know why we got a drug problem. So I got an idea. I sit there with kids. My number one problem in juvenile court is marijuana. They're all using it, apparently. And they can get it just about anywhere. And they tell me, Judge, what's your problem? There's nothing wrong with marijuana. They use it in Colorado. They use it in Washington. They use it in California. I'll invite them to move to Colorado, in California, and Washington. But soon they're probably going to have to just stay right here. And it's going to be a gateway. It's going to be a problem. You look at these studies from Colorado. Here's the real problem in Colorado. The advertisement tells you this is for 21 years and over, but the truth is, in Colorado, it's running rampant with the kids. And why? 29% of them get it from friends who obtain it legally. 25% get it from siblings and family members. 21% of the kids in Colorado under the age of 21 are getting their marijuana from their parents. And 18% are still buying it from the black market, where it's going to be easier to buy, I'm sure, Sheriff Dan, because it's going to be harder to tell if it's the legal stuff, the illegal stuff, or who the heck knows what stuff it is. Opening the door to bringing marijuana into Ohio is just bad because it's more of the inoculation and the access to the answer to everybody's problem is take a drug. You suffer from anxiety, take a drug. You suffer from depression, take a drug. And to our juveniles, the drug of choice today is marijuana. And legalizing it's not going to make that easier, folks. And it's not going to have less heroin addicts in 8 to 10 years. And it's not going to have less cocaine people. We're not going to be burying less of our 25-year-old parents like we do all too often in my court right now because of heroin if we legalize marijuana. And the idea that this is going to fill the gap and everybody's going to live their lives on marijuana is silly. And by the way, 40% of the fatal car accidents in Colorado last year were because of marijuana. 40% was because of alcohol. So you had 8 out of 10 chance of dying in a car accident in California because somebody was abusing a substance so bad that one of the judges' associations I belong to decided not to have their annual meeting in Colorado because the judges were concerned about the safety of having that meeting in Colorado because of the legalization of marijuana. It is a gateway drug. It's going to be a problem. It's going to help inoculate. Does it hurt the grades of students? Oh, absolutely. One of my best tests is to look at the grade point average of the student over a 3-year period. AAA, AAA, ABB, ABB, DDF. Marijuana use started right there. No genius to figure this one out. It does affect a large number of the kids who are using it. The marijuana, I was working out one day after holding some young man accountable for having marijuana, and his father accosted me on my little elliptical machine at the place I work out. And he said, Judge, are you a party pooper? What's wrong with you? I said, I couldn't recognize the guy. I said, I'm sorry, what did I do? And he said, you put my son in the detention center for using marijuana. I said, okay. And it started coming back to me. He said, you're a party pooper. Didn't you use marijuana when you were in college? And I have to say, no, I did not. I didn't. My parents would have killed me if they found out. It was not so much I was a good person, I was a scared person. But I said, no, I didn't. I said, but by the way, the marijuana you probably used in college, sir, was 14 times less strong than the stuff your son's using. And by the way, your son's 14. He's not in college. And so I really don't want to hear about it. But the problem is, we're going to inoculate people to that. That little girl, like was mentioned, she can get her help in Ohio. This is a fraud to say you got to move to Colorado to get medical marijuana for somebody who's suffering from seizures. That police officer in the commercial, this is the 6th state that he's done that commercial in. Okay, so he's not exactly out there without an economic motive. And last but not least, the Ohio Judicial Conference is about to come out with a statement against Issue 3 because of the monopoly angle. You start pumping monopolies into your state constitution, like gambling, like marijuana. I'm sure prostitution's on the horizon because people can make money out of that. And if so, I would like to introduce the amendment that allows me to sell all the water to everybody who has to drink water in the state of Ohio as an exclusive monopoly placed in the Constitution, because that's how ridiculous it gets when you start putting economic monopolies in your state constitution. In 1912, they gave the state of Ohio citizens the right to do initiative petitions, change the Constitution by petition. Those founding fathers did it because they were afraid that politicians in Columbus wouldn't listen to the people. Now we got rich groups of people who want to deceive the people with commercials so that they can have an exclusive monopoly to sell vice to our children. I'm voting no. That's all I can say.
Greg Swenson, would you come on up here and introduce yourself?
Sure. I don't think I need that either.
Oh, you don't need it? Oh, good. There you go. I'll try to get ready. If you do, just take a drug, right?
Well, tough acts to follow. Thank you, everyone. I'm Craig Swenson. I'm the executive director of Geauga County JFS. I was also a prosecutor for almost 10 years, Geauga and Lake County. So I'll try, obviously, not to cover some of the things that have been covered. I was even going to mention what the judge just mentioned. We just had a number of children in the past week. What was it, 10? 10 kids that had to be removed from their parents' custody, care, and control because of drug and alcohol abuse. And currently, as it stands right now, we have 79 children that are Geauga County children that are in out-of-home placements, and approximately 60 of those where JFS, through court order, through juvenile court, is maintaining custody, placed in foster homes, non-kinship homes. And that number has skyrocketed in large part due to what we've had over the past few years, drug and alcohol abuse, but really heroin. But as the judge mentioned, I can't even recall in my time as a prosecutor practicing in juvenile court where we just had just a plain old marijuana test. It just doesn't happen. When we get the drug tests back from the parents that we're involved with, we see heroin, we see cocaine, and we see marijuana. But we don't see the cases where we're just removing kids just because it's marijuana, and we really don't get those kinds of results. And that's just because the culture has changed. The culture, the parenting, of the parents and the children, it's changed. Our social acceptance has changed. What's the next layer of the onion that we're going to peel back and now say, that this is okay? I mean, even when I grew up, it was taboo. These things were, horrid, abhorrent. Our parents said if you even looked in that direction, you're in trouble, you're grounded, you're this, you're that. And now look what's on the ballot in Ohio. I'm ashamed. Aren't you ashamed?
Yes.
Isn't this pathetic?
Yes.
I get the phone call from, my family back home in New York saying, Ohio, I hear, you guys are going to pass marijuana. I mean, it makes you feel sort of sick and disgusted inside that this can happen here. Just imagine the picture of, you're going to go to the grocery store and, that rank stench that we all know, you smell at concerts or whatever, we're going to be walking down the hallway shopping, smelling that, walking with our kids. Isn't that just pathetic? Mm-hmm. Think about, right now it's hard enough to raise kids. I have 4 little kids myself. And just thinking about our neighbors. If I want to have my kid to go over to one of my neighbors who I think I know, but they may have 4 marijuana plants growing in their house. Kids ask, "What's that, Dad? What's this stuff?" "Oh, what if they grab it?" I mean, you're going to have to be thinking these pot brownies. I mean, there's going to be oils. If you look at there's going to be things. I mean, we're not going to know if we're going to be able to keep our kids safe just at our neighbor's house or a play date, or if you are, your kid gets invited to that school party where you don't really know the family, but they invited the class, and you're just not going to know, what they're going to be exposed to, because this is up for a vote, and it's a total shift in what our culture and what's socially acceptable. And if this gets passed, what's next? What's coming down the pike? Because it's coming. And the other thing is, they talk about all the money that's going to get brought back. How this is going to be so good for, our culture. And just from a JFS perspective, we have social workers out in the field. They're already fielding the questions. And I'm sure Judge hears the testimony in court. Oh, well, it's not that bad. It's going to be okay. But that doesn't stop, because just like blowing smoke in a kid's face is child abuse, or what have you, or getting exposed to that, the work is we legalize this stuff, it's still going to meet the standards of abuse or neglect or dependency if they're letting kids to be exposed to this stuff in their homes. So, those costs, are going to go up. Those investigations are still going to happen. We're still going to be in the, unfortunately, removing kids. Yes, while it would be legal to have 4 plants and to smoke, but it still doesn't mean it's right for kids or families to be exposing, that too. So it's not just like that this is going to end. It's going to create more issues, and it's a perfect segue, to the law enforcement side. We're gonna see that, significantly as well.
Sheriff Dan and his deputy is next there.
Good evening.
Good evening. After, when Sheriff's finished, we're going to open it up to you folks, starting with Sheriff. The first question is for him, and then to the panelists. And do you need the mic, Sheriff?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay? Good. The Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police, the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, 2 Ohio large law enforcement entities, have come out absolutely opposed to issue 3. See, this big book that everybody's referenced to, 180 some pages. I'd like to read a couple more excerpts. A lot of my thunder was taken. It's good. The homeless population in Colorado has swelled since marijuana was legalized, and many shelters say marijuana is to blame. In Colorado, the number of overnight beds provided at shelters by the Salvation Army increased 285% since marijuana was legalized. So you're going to attract people to your state. We didn't talk about that. These aren't hard-working people. And again, to drive another point home, since legalization, marijuana-related traffic deaths in Colorado have increased 92%. That's not a good direction. That's the wrong direction. During the same time period, all traffic deaths, increased by 8%. We talk about the problem in the schools. In Colorado, since legalizing marijuana, the number of drug-related suspensions and expulsions from schools have increased 40%. These are significant numbers. Marijuana seriously impairs a person's ability to drive, and states that have legalized marijuana have seen a big increase in people driving while high. Duh. Okay? Since legalizing marijuana in 2012, the state of Washington has seen an 83% increase in DUI cases with marijuana-positive blood tests. That's not a good direction. That's the wrong way. Marijuana is being sold to Ohioans as greatly increasing tax revenue. In Colorado, that tax revenue fell well short of the governor's office revenue estimates. Edible marijuana products that are marketed as cookies and candy will accidentally be eaten by kids, by children. The Rocky Mountain Poison and Drug Center, this scares me, has seen a 265% increase in the average number of marijuana-related exposures in children under the age of 5. Okay? 265% increase. Make no doubt about it, marijuana-infused candy and sweets are to be sold in Ohio. Okay? Geauga County. Bring it home a little bit. Anybody here besides me grew up in the 60s? Okay, thanks. Thank you, you brave guys. Okay? They want to say marijuana is not addictive. Okay? Those of us a little older probably remember a term called stoners. Okay? Everybody nodding? For those who don't know, maybe a little young, stoner was a term used that was an adjective. It was somebody burned out on marijuana, brain fried, couldn't concentrate, okay, couldn't hold jobs, probably one of the homeless. I tell people I run the largest hotel in Geauga County. Unfortunately, it's become the largest rehab facility in Geauga County. An average population hovering around 130 to 140 inmates every day. I'm here to tell you that if we could get substance abuse out of our community, substance abuse, we wouldn't need that big jail. In fact, the old jail that's been torn down years ago would be too big. My corrections supervisor, jail administrator, and I both independently came to the same conclusion: a conservative 95% of the inmates wouldn't be in jail. Right? It's not all from dealing. It's from all the other crimes that come together. You see, when you're high, or trying to feed a habit, or a stoner, can't hold a job, you steal. You get in fights, domestics. Okay? I mean, a whole list of crimes are committed, and these people come to the jail. If issue 3 passes, my prediction is my business will be good. And that's bad. And that's bad. I hear constantly, it's only marijuana. Believe me, in my line of work, we get that a lot. It's only marijuana. It was only marijuana that a man broke into an apartment at Hayes and 87 in Middlefield and took a 2-year-old child sleeping, kidnapped them off the couch. Stranger, not a family member, not a neighbor, a stranger. Okay? Tried to give that child away, hallucinating. It's only marijuana. It's here in Geauga County. It was marijuana just a couple of months ago in Willoughby that an automobile driver, high on marijuana, drove into a house. Stranger's house, not theirs. 95% of the people in the Geauga County Jail wouldn't be there if we could take substance abuse out of our culture. Legalizing marijuana is not moving us in a positive direction. I absolutely agree with the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police, the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, and the panelists. Please vote no on issue 3. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to open it up to the floor right now with questions, starting with Sheriff Dan, and then we'll just go to the panelists. Yes, ma'am.
How do we counteract people who are saying, well, we got to have the medical marijuana, which is totally a different chemical derivative from the marijuana that you're wanting to pass? Because that's the big premise. A lot of people are saying, if we pass that, then that's the...
I'll start with that, and then I might ask Dr. Michelson to chime in as well on that. The part of marijuana that might have medicinal value can be duplicated in a laboratory in a sanitary controlled environment, put in a controlled portion into a pill form. What it lacks is it won't get you high. My father died a few years ago of cancer. Tragically, the end was difficult. He was in a lot of pain. There's no doubt in my mind, my dad, in those final days, was addicted to prescription pain pills, Percocets, Vicodins, opioids, like heroin's an opiate. I did not get my father heroin because I thought it would be better. Okay? If there's a medical value, we'll have it. I truly believe that. Doctor, you would like to add something on that?
Just quickly, as Judge Topeka mentioned, to talk about medical marijuana is an oxymoron because you've got several hundred elements in that. But to talk about some parts of that being used for medicine, that's accurate and could be efficacious. And I talked to Dr. Ted Perrin about this last week, and some of you were there. And I'm just going to quote him here because, in my opinion, he's the best addictionologist and MD in our area. He says, for every disease and disorder for which marijuana has been recommended, there is a better FDA-approved medication already available. So people that want to get high want medical marijuana. People that want relief from a medical condition can already get the medicine.
I'd just like to add to that. In many groups where I've had physicians speak, I mean, you can have your thoughts or opinions about the FDA, but they're the ones that, as it stands right now, who regulate medications in this country. It takes 8 characteristics for a substance to pass as a medication to be approved by the FDA. Marijuana does not meet one of those 8 characteristics. So, go to the approved medications. I would say that's the route to take.
But to answer your question, I sat with a group of ladies from my church last week, and they were all in favor of issue 3 because they saw that commercial of that poor little girl, the grandma on her head right there. None of us want our children to move to Colorado when our children are ill, our grandchildren are ill, to get their medicine that they need. And that commercial is just not true. The commercial is playing on the sensitivities of grandparents and parents, and you're saying, oh my Lord, we got to legalize this so the nice family can move back to Ohio. They can get their medical care in Ohio today. They can't get weed to smoke, and there's no 4-year-old girl smoking a joint to get over her personality or her seizures. That's insane. If you got to think of medical marijuana in 2 terms. There is the use of the marijuana derivative as a medicine that Dennis just talked about. That is allowed in Ohio and everywhere else. Certain pharmacies only. It's not every pharmacy, but there's certain ones you can get that medical derivative use of marijuana. But the states that have, quote, legalized medical marijuana is just a euphemism for trying to introduce weed into the community. And they couldn't get the people to take the full leap of weed, so they took the leap under the medical use. So in California, if you're a 13-year-old with anxiety, depression, you can get a prescription to go buy weed and smoke a joint. That's nuts, okay? Just purely nuts, but somebody's making money from that. And by the way, the reason why this is being pushed in Ohio today, in my opinion, is that in the next 2 to 4 years, the people of Colorado will put an amendment on the ballot to take away legalized marijuana in Colorado. So you got to get it in the Ohio Constitution before Colorado takes it out of their state. Because the reality will come home. It's coming home in Colorado. They're not getting the tax dollars. They're getting the dead people. They're having the problems with the children getting sick from eating this stuff. And so if you wait too long, other states won't fall prey to this. So they got to get it done now. And it's worse because they're putting it in our Constitution. A Constitution that was never meant to give a monopoly for gambling, a monopoly for drugs, a monopoly for the next device. And the problem is, historically, once you put something in that Constitution, it's gonna be difficult to ever get it out. And so talk to your friends and neighbors, get the letters to the editors. This commercial about this poor little kid is the worst deception of all.
The whole medical marijuana, you have to take it one more step. Do you want your child or grandchild's bus driver smoking medical marijuana? Whoa, I got some reaction on that one. Okay? Your babysitter, your child care. It's medical. I got a doctor's. It's legal. Answer clearly, no. Okay?
Right. No. I was just going to add one thing. I believe there's 23 states and the District of Columbia that have some level of legalized marijuana. And there are 4 that, that have done the full-blown. But Ohio, just so you guys know, under Issue 3, is going to be the first of all the states that's trying to do them both at one time. No other state has done that. And, it's really obviously a strong push to that. But not even Colorado, we've all been talking a lot about. I think they did their first portion in 2000 and then waited 12 years till 2012 to do the latter. So it's just...
Has anybody followed the money on this? Who wants to put this in the Constitution? Where's this community from? What's the source of the push?
Well, I believe
it's the group of guys who are going to make the money from having. So you understand how this works in Ohio. And I can talk to my former senator life about the gambling and then give you a little correlation. The way you make your monopoly work is what they did with the gambling. They didn't say gambling was legalized in Ohio. They said you could conduct casino gambling on 4 properties in the state of Ohio that were geographically described by metes and bounds in that constitutional amendment that people voted for. And so if you owned those properties, you won the lottery. Literally, you got to own 4 casinos. And the guys who pushed that amendment, paid the $25 million or so for the advertising to get people to vote for it, were the guys who owned the 4 properties. Well, this thing has 10 properties. And only these 10 properties can be used for the grows and manufacture of the marijuana, and then they can license 159 outlets. And so if you own those 10 parcels, you are going to win the marijuana lottery if this thing passes, because the owners of those 10 pieces of real estate, whoever they are today, are pushing this agenda because they will have the exclusive rights to do marijuana in the state of Ohio. That's the part that makes it so wrong, to be honest with you, from a legal perspective, because it forecloses everybody else. Look, if the state of Ohio wants to legalize marijuana, I wouldn't vote for it, but that's the right of the people of the state to decide. But you sure as heck shouldn't put it in your Constitution because it's hard as heck to get it out, and you sure as heck shouldn't make it a monopoly for a handful of rich people who are going to spend $40 million on commercials deceiving folks into voting for this thing so that they can get really, really rich. And by the way, it's full job security for me. It's full job security for Judge Topeka. It's full job security for Sheriff Dan, for Mr. Swenson, for Mr. Nicholson. It's full job security, folks. I mean, we will be even busier, if it's possible, in the next 5 years if this passes than we are now. We're going to need more jail space at the Hotel McClellan. We're going to need more social workers at the JFS of Mr. Swenson. You're going to need more bailiffs and people at the municipal court. And I don't have enough places to put children now, from the parents who are misusing heroin and the kids who are misusing marijuana. So I don't even know how we're going to solve that problem.
Well, and I just want to say one thing. I was looking for it. I was listening, but in August of 2015, they put the survey out again. Right now, almost 51% would oppose it in Colorado. So if it was on the ballot now, 51% would not go for it. Wow. So, and that's out of that 182-page survey.
And the polling's going to say it's likely to pass now. Right. Quinnipiac is like 57%. They're saying that it's going to pass.
If I could add to what Judge Grindell was saying, in the presentation we received, I believe it was in July, the state board was told that each of the 10 proponents of the legalization of marijuana in the state of Ohio individually put up $1 million. And as was already mentioned, they likely stand to recover all of that and much more. So to say follow the money, it would appear that those who are backing it, who primarily started the ballot issue and paid for the signatures to be collected, do have personal financial interests involved.
County Commissioner,
let me add on to that. For those of you who don't know, I'm a county commissioner. If you've not been given enough reasons yet to decide this is a bad idea, let me give you one more. Your taxes will go up. As a county commissioner, I have to fund many of the departments who are sitting at this table. The sheriff, Jobs and Family Services, the courts, and we're challenged today, given our current situation, to keep our budget in line. And we're doing a pretty good job of that, struggling a little bit, but we're working hard at that. If the amount of increase comes through in Geauga County, you will see your taxes go up. And if that's not reason enough, let me give you one more thought, and that is we were talking about the big money coming into our state. You think these folks are going to be passive at trying to push this commodity that they've now won to get into our state? They are going to be actively pushing. These are drug pushers who are actively pushing a substance in our state, and they will push it to everybody they can push it to. Think of the little camel creature for cigarettes. They're going to push it to everybody that they can push it to. These people are scum. I'm sorry for not being very politically correct, but that's the fact of it. These folks are scum. Look at the commercials that they're putting out there. Look at what their intent is. They're morally corrupt, in my opinion. And so that's my non-politically correct commentary on that.
How you really feel.
Right, let me just mention there's a book called Chasing the Scream. You'll hear a lot about it as you go along. I speak to a lot of people around the state and the country, and I get the other side of this quite often. And in that book, it makes a very good case for the fact that it would be a better idea to have legal entities producing marijuana than illegal. And so basically the argument comes down to, would you rather have an illegal cartel or a legal cartel? And they make a pretty good case for the thing, but here's the part that they always seem to leave out. Again, you go back to addiction. You're still going to have to deal with the same 15% of the population, regardless of what you do. But think about the other 85% that are maybe just users or non-users or abusers who are not addicted. Now, just think about that for a minute. Young pot smokers will manifest ADD symptoms with non-hyperactive features. Have you ever wondered why we've had such an upsurge in diagnosis of ADD? Okay, maybe there's a link there, but here's something I really want you to consider. An increase in the use of a substance is predated by a decrease in safety concerns by about 5 years. Let me say that again. An increase in the use of a substance is predated by a decrease in safety concerns by about 5 years. That basically means once you lower the factor, then 5 years later you get the tsunami. While I was in the jail doing assessments day in and day out, we have to do drug histories and drug and alcohol histories, and some of you counselors here would verify this. Most of your addicts these days do not even consider pot a drug. You'll say, what's your drug use? And they say, well, I use meth and I use heroin. And of course you always want to say, well, what about alcohol and pot? You said, well, I thought you were asking about drugs. See, they don't even consider it to be a drug. Now, that's in the addicted population of 15%. You carry that over to the 85% that have always had it on their bucket list to try a little marijuana, but the only thing that held them back is it's illegal. Well, remove that, and they may kick the bucket or at least get their bucket list done. It's just not a good idea. And again, this whole thing of why not just wait and see how it pans out in other places? That makes so much sense to me, even if you're for it or against it. It's like, see what the next door neighbors do with it before you go invest something and lock in all of these controls over the long haul.
Well, and also from my vantage point, they've decriminalized it such. Why do we need to legalize it? I mean, you can smoke up, you can have under 100 milligrams really don't know how much that is, but it's about an inch in a baggie, I've been told. And, if you allow these 4 plants in a home, we did what it produces. That produces enough to have 1 joint every 4 hours around the clock for a year. Do we really need that much pot, each individual? I mean,
And when you ask people, what did you start with? Typically, it'll be alcohol, pot, and then everything else or whatever. You always, Larry Smith and I, he runs Lake County Jail Treatment Program. We've always been interested in why is alcohol oftentimes first? Well, it's because it's in the home. It's like the judge was saying, it's available. Well, right now, at least supposedly, the pot's not in the home. But once the pot gets in the home, then you've got that factor again. I mean, where do kids get their pills? They get them out of your medicine cabinet. Where do they get the alcohol? Out of your liquor cabinet. Now you're going to have these little custom-made humidors sold by these 10 places for your pot, and they'll get it out of there. So it's just not a good idea.
I guess my question is, if they legalize marijuana, what are the courts going to do for the county workers that come in drunk or high from marijuana? A police officer walking around with a firearm? I mean, is there going to be some internal rules that police and the courts are going to take for their employees and township and county employees?
I can tell you what I do. I mean, well, let's put it this way. As it sits right now, it is federally illegal. The government right now could come in and arrest or prosecute every prosecutor in a state where it's legal and say you are breaking federal law. But they're in a wait-and-see mode. It would still be up to the employer to determine a no-tolerance policy. And you have to think of these things. $81 billion a year, Department of Labor statistics, is lost in productivity because of marijuana. But
what I hear you saying is you're going to honor federal law.
I don't want people smoking pot who are dealing with the public, because I want my people to be on their game, and it would be up to the city. I'm a city employee technically, but I would propose that right now I would like every county elected official to be drug tested as it stands now. I'll be the first one in line to do it, but yeah. But you know what? It's a mind-altering substance, whether it's legal or not. It's in the Netherlands, where it's been legal for 40 years. Behind alcohol, marijuana is still the next substance of abuse.
Just a lot of valuable statistics have been thrown out by the hand.
I can't hear. I'm having a hard time hearing you, Storm, so I can hear.
A lot of valuable statistics have been thrown out by the panel. And Sheriff McClellan said that the law enforcement agencies of Ohio were unanimously opposed. But I'm not seeing any of these statistics on TV from any organization.
That's the problem. Who's gonna pay to run the anti-ads? I mean, you're not going to use taxpayers' dollars to pay for it, because I think we would have problems doing that. And you don't see any organized group called Ohioans Against Marijuana, because nobody is good at the money to invest in that. I mean, normally how these things, when the gambling first came up, the first issue by Mr. Spitzer to legalize gambling in Ohio and put a casino at the Black River, the anti-program was financed by the Catholic Church that had bingo, by the Lottery Commission that had lottery, and by the horse tracks who had the only legalized gambling in the state of Ohio. They put up $1 million, and they killed Mr. Spitzer's effort to change the Constitution to give him the first casino. But what happened was, by the time they legalized gambling, which they finally did, they made it part of the lottery, so the lottery got their cut of the pie. The Catholic Church, for some reason, bingo apparently no longer had the value, or they had other issues that they were actually having to deal with, which we won't get into tonight. And the horse tracks were starting to get bought up by the guys who owned the casinos. And so the problem is, unless you're selling the alternatives to marijuana, unless the underage liquor salesmen of Ohio want to form a PAC, there's nobody out there who's going to fund the anti-ad. That's why the grassroots. That's why I thank the Tea Party, I thank Pastor, I thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm sure the whole panel does, because you can only win this battle at the grassroots. If every one of you goes out and finds 10 people tonight, or tomorrow morning, and educates those 10 people as to what's wrong with issue 3, and don't believe those commercials, and you ask them to educate 10 people, and by the time we get to the election, you will make up for not having those TV ads. But if you leave here tonight disgruntled that this is bad and nobody's paying for the anti-TV ads, we're in big trouble. Because the only way to win this is word of mouth, to get the word out to responsible groups. If you belong to a Rotary, the Kiwanis, the Little Sisters of the Poor, whatever, if you can spread the word, that's the only way we're going to win this issue. If you don't, there's nobody coming to the rescue with $5 million worth of TV ads to counteract the $10 million that they're going to be running.
A couple of things real quick, and I'm going to dovetail to what Judge Grindell just said. If you want to get some facts, and I was just going to touch on that. If you want to get some facts, go to Geauga County Tea Party website. There's 3 fact sheets on there that talk about the nature of issue 3. The other website you can go to is the Secretary of State's website. On the front page of the Secretary of State's website is the wording for issue 3. I wholeheartedly support what Judge Grindell just said. If there's an argument to be made for marijuana, I'm not convinced that there is, but if there is, it should not be through a constitutional amendment. And if you look at that amendment, there's catches in that amendment that should scare the dickens out of you. For example, a local municipality cannot opt out. You cannot say, no, my community doesn't want any part in this. You have to play. You have to play this game. And there's a lot of other requirements, constraints in there that as a constitutional amendment, you have to do these things. I, as a county commissioner, am required now by the state of law of Ohio, unless I don't want to violate federal law, which I'm going to have to talk to the judges about and my prosecutor about. But a question came up the other day. Marijuana is unlike alcohol. They're both can get you high. But with marijuana, I don't have personal experience on this, by the way, you're either high or you're not. I can have a glass of wine, get a little buzz going, and next day take a drug test, and the drug test isn't going to show that I have anything in my system. With marijuana, you will have stuff in your system the next day, and by the way, you are high. You are not a little high, you are high. And so somebody smokes a marijuana cigarette, they get in the car, you got a problem. If I've got somebody that comes into work for the county, a sheriff, or somebody who's working with our kids in JFS, and they've just smoked a joint, they say, well, it's legal. Maybe a true statement. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'll leave you to decide that. But if you want more information, go to the website, and there's information on the website relative to issue 2 versus issue 3. Issue 3 creates a monopoly. Not a good thing in the state of Ohio. It's not a good thing any place. We should never institute monopolies. Let free enterprise take care of things. Issue 2 pushes back on that. Issue 2 says no monopolies in the state of Ohio. So the legislator tried to create a firewall to push back on issue 3. Yes on issue 2, no on issue 3. That's how I'm voting when I go into the polls. And by the way, no on issue 1 too.
But to answer your legal question, if issue 2 passes and issue 3 passes, the question will become, does 2 cancel 3? Because 2 says no constitutional monopoly, 3 would be a constitutional monopoly. You can do law review discussions here tonight on the views of lawyers on this. The lawyers who want marijuana to be legalized says 3 would still pass because it got there before 2 became law. Others will tell you 2 will dominate because once the Constitution is changed, it's changed, and you can't violate the Constitution. I will submit the question will be decided by the Ohio Supreme Court down the line when they decide whether 2 beats 3 or 3 beats 2 will be an issue that will be decided in 2 or 3 years by the Ohio Supreme Court if issue 2 and 3 both pass.
I have a question about the taxes. We have heard that there was going to be no increase in property taxes on those 10 properties. It was going to lock in their property rate forever.
That's a good deal. Why not? When you write your own constitutional amendment, I mean, think about it. When you write your own constitutional amendment, you can write anything you want, right? You don't have to pay taxes. I don't know if that's what it says, to be honest with you. It doesn't surprise me if it does. They wrote their own constitutional amendment. They paid some of the best lawyers in Ohio to write that constitutional amendment, and I'm sure those people spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make it work for them. They weren't going to make it work for you and me. They were passing this for us, folks. They weren't passing it for anybody except the people who stood to win the lottery by getting this thing into the Constitution. So that doesn't surprise me. I agree with Commissioner Claypool, though. The real problem is our property taxes are going to go up. His jail's not free. My court doesn't run for free. Her court doesn't run for free. It costs him $250, $300 a day per child for those 79 children that he's got outside placements. Think about what that is in a month, folks. And it's only going to get worse. 3 years ago, I didn't have all these drug cases. I had 4 drug cases a year, I think, and it was mostly methamphetamine in the trailer parks. Now I got 4 drug cases a week. Some a day. On Mondays, it's dreadful. I hate Mondays. It's drug day because all the people on the weekend got caught using heroin. But I mean, he's right. This is going to, whether they're going to, I'm sure they won. They wrote their own statute or their own constitution, but he's right too. We're going to pay.
And by the way, a lot of those people we're going to be paying for are not from our county.
Yeah, that's right.
They're coming in from Cleveland. They're coming in from Ashtabula. They're coming in from Youngstown. They're coming in from out of state. They're coming in from all over the place. And so we're going to be paying for people who are not even from our county.
If I may, before you ask your next question, the Secretary of State's ballot initiative says that it would prohibit any local or state law, including zoning laws, from being applied to prohibit the development or operation of the marijuana growth, cultivation, and extraction facilities, and it would create a special tax rate limited to 15% on the gross revenue of each marijuana growth, cultivation, and extraction facility and manufacturing facility, and a special tax rate limited to 5% on gross revenue of each retail marijuana store.
Can you translate that, please, sir?
Taxes go up. No. Excuse me. Taxes are limited for the marijuana growers.
You pay 8% tax in Lake County, 6% tax when you buy something in Geauga County, but you only pay 5% tax when you buy your marijuana.
You pay more, they pay less. And by the way, how many of you like what you're hearing tonight? How many of you wish you had brought somebody with you?
Oh, yeah.
I've asked the other 2 commissioners if we can do the same thing with the same board, either the 22nd or the 29th. I'm leaning toward the 29th right now because Ms. Topeka can make that night. And she's so good, isn't she? Yep. And so if you can come and bring some friends with you, the only way we're going to get this out and to combat this, and keep in mind, there's not a lot of money coming into Geauga County to fight this because they don't see us as a factor. All of their money is going into Cleveland. Do you know what's being done right now in Cleveland? The companies that are pushing this are going to the campuses. They're going to John Carroll University. They're going to Case Western Reserve. They're going to Akron. They're going to Cleveland State. And they're pushing this on the campuses. And they're telling the kids, well, what's a little marijuana here? Take a toke. It's not so bad. In order for us to push back and to fight this, we're going to have to be active. Like Judge Grindell said, if you go home tonight, you stare at the ceiling and say, geez, I wish there was something I could do. There is. But you have to take action. And so if we have if the commissioners in agreement, I think they are, the 29th at 6:30 at the county offices, I'm going to give you an opportunity to be some friends if I can convince the board to come and be a part of that.
Very good. Right here.
Yeah. Very good.
One of the things that I think you can all do is if you have any friends or relatives anywhere else in Ohio, send information to them because we get the feeling that maybe Northeast Ohio is in good shape as far as educating people, but we're a little worried about Southern Ohio. So if you have a relative anywhere or a friend, do that. There's a small group of maybe 6 of us who have been working very hard in trying to combat the legalization of marijuana. My husband and I committed today to $900 charge to put, those annoying stickers that go on the front of your paper. Well, we committed to 30,000 of those stickers going on the News Herald on October 25th because it's a Sunday and they said that's their highest publication rate. So we have committed to the $900. We have formed a pact, so it's all legal, and we have to, we're registered with the state of Ohio, and we have to, get back to them to say who gave what when. So there are people that are fighting to combat this, but it's not easy.
How many of you remember the film years and years ago, Reefer Madness? Anybody remember that one? You remember that one? It was like they tried to scare everybody straight by giving worst case scenarios and everything. I think you've heard some really good information tonight. Just be careful when you promote this and talk to people about it that you don't overstate it. You don't go overboard. You don't try to give worst case scenario. Like any other mood or mind altering substance, marijuana will be addicting to about 15% of the population. Always keep that in mind. Most marijuana users will not develop addiction. Now, I hope you understand that. Some people can use it. They do all right. Thank you very much. Some people use alcohol. Not everyone who uses alcohol is addicted. Not everyone that uses marijuana. We have to deal with the 15% and then those who abuse it and overdo it or get caught by the sheriff. But think about this. Marijuana using high school students are 104 times more likely to try cocaine than non-marijuana using students. Okay? See, alcohol gets you into wanting euphoria, that good feeling. Marijuana comes second because it's illegal now, and there's that little bit of a protective factor. Now we're thinking about voting to remove that. I would say this. You take an addict that we've dealt with in the jail or in the court system, and I can't think of one, maybe one or two, over a number of years who in their drug history did not have marijuana somewhere in there. Now, I don't think you can say marijuana made them heroin addicts, but it doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to understand if you arrive at the heroin depot by way of alcohol and pot, you've got to factor that in. This past Sunday, Judge Topeka and I, and perhaps some of you were at a memorial service for a 33-year-old mother of three who died of a heroin overdose. Okay? I don't know if pot had been legal or illegal, if she would have become a heroin addict, but I suspect she would have. Okay? But all of that factors into what I said earlier tonight. The substance is important to focus on, but you've got to do family history, you've got to do the environment, you've got to work on the home and all these other big issues. And just so you understand that this is not just theoretical or political or whatever, while I'm doing this memorial service for this dear mother who's gone on, my phone goes off on vibrate, and I look down at it, and one of the ladies that I was going to have speak at the service found her husband dead of a heroin overdose. Now, if you hear this thing has let up, don't believe it. It just goes on week after week after week. And this is not just philosophical or theological or all of those other things. This is life and death with a lot of people. And a lot of these folks do get their start, See, the same mechanism that causes someone to be addicted to heroin, the dopamine surge, and the reward pathway in the brain, the same mechanism is with marijuana. And so, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or whatever, it just sort of builds up. There's a progression. There's an early, middle, and late. So, be sure you get your facts straight and think through these things. And I would just caution you, Don't just throw something out there, because the other side of this, they're very well prepared, they're very well versed, they have some arguments, and you just need to be prepared for that.
And I want to use the mic because I want to all have the accurate information, just in tandem with what Dr. Michelson said. I don't know if anyone else, I'm sure some of us have been at forums where Responsible Ohio has spoke. They say marijuana is not addictive. They say there's no problems in Colorado, or Colorado is not experiencing problems. I've heard those quotes. And like Dr. Michelson says, you want to be accurate in your statistics or your facts. Like some of us have said, you want to spread the word. To get that 182-page book of statistics, which many of us have, used today to relay some of those facts, it's at www.rmhidta.org. Again, that's www.r as in Rocky, M as in mountain, H as in high, I as in intensity, D as in drug, T as in trafficking, A as in area.org. You can read it for yourself. I've spent many a night doing it. It's a bunch of statistics, but it's really eye-opening. So, Reverend Pastor, I don't know if we're done. Any other questions?
Yeah, we got plenty of questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're going to go for a few more minutes. Questions. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask all of you a question. If KP3 passes, do you think that will increase or decrease the number of police citizens encounters?
Sheriff Dan?
Increase.
Okay. Will it increase or decrease? I only have so many officers. Okay. We cover 400 square miles. I looked at the board. I had 5 working tonight. So each one's got multiple townships. They're busy. They're making encounters. I think if you take the statistics, it's going to increase because the call volume is going to go up. Okay? You start having more accidents, you're going to call that a police encounter. Yes. You're going to have more other problems. Vagrancy, suspicious persons, people hanging around a business when it's trying to close. You're going to increase police encounters. So, yeah, I think it will.
I was trying to keep the question related to police citizen encounters because of marijuana.
Yeah. Well, if you have an increase in crime, you're going to have an increase in activity in law enforcement. You're going to have an increased activity by the courts, by JFS. So,
What the sheriff is saying is people that are high commit crimes.
right.
Instead of drug driving, you'll have drug driving.
But in Colorado, they actually went to the school resource officers who are policemen, and they asked them, since recreational marijuana, how does it impact the marijuana-related incidents in your school? A 90% reported an increase, and in the Denver public schools, the marijuana legalized police student involvement in the year after legalization went up 39%.
Sure.
So yes, there's going to be more marijuana-related, especially with kids under 21, because it's still going to be illegal, by the way, folks, to be using marijuana under 21.
But if you use the statistic, since legalization, marijuana-related traffic deaths have increased 92%. One could make the argument we're going to respond to twice as many fatal accidents.
That will increase police fire and EMS as well.
Right. And that's going to impact fire, yes.
Let me comment on that, because I was just having a conversation with our coroner, the Geauga County coroner, the other day. We were having a budget hearing, talking about his budget. He's doing a real nice job managing his budget. He was explaining a situation where somebody was high on marijuana. They were euphoric, having a good time, decided it'd be a good idea to huff this air that you spray on the keyboards. Okay? So they breathe that in, crystallize their lungs, and kill them.
Dust off.
Yes. Well, whatever you call it. I don't have a personal experience with any of that stuff. But what the coroner was telling us, I don't hail anything like that. Sometimes a little vapor from the turpentine that I'm putting on my furniture. But
You do protest too much.
I don't inhale.
honestly, I don't. But what I'm trying to tell you is, I don't want to make this sound funny, is that the coroner was telling us how his workload is going up as a result of a variety of things, some of which shocked me. And it comes back to what has been talked on this board. When somebody's getting high, they're looking for the next substance to use. Well, I wonder if this works. I wonder if this works. I wonder if this works. You know, I drink a glass of wine every so often. I don't think about going out and trying to get high for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But for some reason, in this particular in substance abuse, it is the next substance, and people are looking for that. My coroner and various other people that I talk to, it's not something I ever contemplated having discussions about. But I believe we're going to see significant change. And again, I'm going to reinforce, there's going to be a lot of this coming into our county from outside. It's not just going to be local, because people are going to come here searching.
Okay, this young lady right here.
I just wanted to add that my husband's in law enforcement, and he had a good point, too, that right now, if he pulls somebody over and sees marijuana, he can search their car, and I hope I'm wording this right, but he can find more drugs that are heroin or anything else. But right now, if he sees that if this passes, he won't be able to search for more. So that'll...
That's not true.
You won't be? You want to speak to that?
Well, it depends on the weight a lot of the times, and you're allowed to grow it in your home, and it depends on how much you're possessing. So,
I'm saying if it passes,
that's more of a probable cause issue. I don't think carte blanche it's going to say you can't search. Right? I mean, it depends on. There's a lot of factors that would go into that. I don't think you can stop.
The expectation of privacy in your home and places is a constitutional right. To infringe, for lack of a better term, on that, we have to have something called probable cause. There are times when that probable cause can be determined on a traffic stop. There are other times when that probable cause must be double-checked, if you would, by the judicial system. We get a search warrant signed by a judge. We tell them, hey, this is what we've got. This is the evidence. This is the statements made, what we saw, etc. And we need a search warrant to enter. I don't see that changing. I don't see that changing. Okay.
We're going to do just 5 more questions.
Yes, in Colorado, there's a windfall tax revenue for the state. Did the legislators give themselves a pay raise for that money?
I don't know that. You want to answer that?
Do you know, Tim?
I know the governor had to change his budget by about 50% downward, give or take, is what some of the report referenced, because the tax revenue was not anticipated. Remember, it's a cash business. Because it's not federally approved or regulated, you can't deposit the cash in the banks. You can't use credit cards to buy anything. They were even having some issues with the people who market as retail sellers, because it's consumer law, which is federally, through the federal government. They have issues with some types of advertising. So there are still many problems because of the conflict between federal and state laws.
Lady over there.
I want to clarify that I understand this correctly. In Ohio, it's changing the Constitution, but in Colorado, it didn't change our Constitution.
No, they changed their Constitution.
It was a constitutional amendment.
It was, okay. Is this being taped, this session this evening, for us to access online somehow? And thank you all for being here.
I know some people are taping it, but I don't know if it's for personal use, no pun intended, or, or for public viewing.
All right.
I don't know if it's put online anywhere. So
3 more questions. So, front row, right here.
Dr. Michelson, is it true that marijuana, if you have, just like any other drug, if you have an addictive personality, if addiction it runs in your vein of your what you descended from, that you can become addicted to say marijuana or any of the drugs a lot quicker? And that's my first question. Then I have a comment. Okay?
The question, if you didn't hear it, was about the susceptibility to addiction running in families, generally speaking.
Personality, yeah.
Usually, if you have a significant family history of addiction, the likelihood of your offspring is fourfold, 4 times as much. And again, I go back to Dr. Ted Perrin, who I think is one of my heroes here in the area. He'll say the 3 biggest indicators as to whether you can predict if someone's going to become an addict is family history, and family history. And I think some of the judges are beginning to see that now because they're getting acquainted with the whole family tree.
And I think my comment to follow this, I think on the ballot it states that it's for not only medicinal purposes but also recreational purposes, and that's what originally turned me off on that issue, was the recreational purpose and that you could grow your own plants. And I think everybody needs to be aware of that those are 2 hot spots, okay, that doesn't have anything to do with the poor little girl on TV, taking the oils from the marijuana.
Yeah, always remember that the absolute worst way to deliver medicine is by smoking it.
Yeah.
That just doesn't cut it. That's just not the way to do it. Yes, sir.
Carl.
Forgive me, I have another engagement to
All
speak
right.
at, so I apologize. I'm not
Thank you,
cutting off.
Thank you. Not long ago, there was great talk about the secondhand effect of cigarette smoke. Is there a medically established danger from secondhand smoke from marijuana smoking?
He asked about secondhand marijuana smoke, and there is a danger. I don't know all the particulars on, comparing it to cigarettes as to marijuana, but it's got so many carcinogens in it, and again, you're always talking about where did it come from, who processed it. There's no standard, so you don't know what's in it. Down at the jail one night, we had some people going completely bonkers, and we couldn't understand what was going on, and they were cutting the drugs with battery acid. So you don't know what's in, your smoke. Of course, the other side would say if we grow our own, then we can have quality control. And then I would think that quality might not be the best word to use there. Oh, it stinks. I'm not sure. If you're around someone smoking marijuana, it'll be like being around someone smoking a cigarette. I mean, it'll be smoke, that's for sure. And I'm not blowing smoke.
Okay. One last question. Who's got one last question?
I'd like to make a statement.
Sure.
I'm as concerned about the legal issues here of monopolies. They're taking away a certain privilege from competition.
Right. It's monopoly.
That is denied freedom.
And should never be in your Constitution.
Right.
You shouldn't take away the freedom of free enterprise in your Constitution. It's just not the right place to do it wrong. But you can't get it out very easily. It's going to be hard to change it. People don't like to admit they made a mistake. If the people 57% vote to put this in the Constitution, you're going to require that 57% someday to look in the mirror and say, we made a mistake, we have to fix it. And unfortunately, that's not human nature. People tend to, once they especially do something as serious as change the Constitution, not want to admit their human frailty that they were misled by TV ads or whatever and change their mind. That's why once they're counting on that. They're counting on once they get it in the Constitution that the people's unwillingness to admit their own mistake will keep it there for a long time.
All right, very well. Let's hear it for our panel.